It's a great honor to speak here today, and thank you very much for the invitation. Let me first share my slide. Okay, so the title of my presentation is the demographic change and Korea's economic growth prospect. And today I would like to examine the central question: can Korea sustain economic growth on the rapid demographic change? And what would be the role of the human capital, AI, and institutions in that process? I believe this question is, of course, important for Korea, but not just for Korea, for any aging economies, including Japan. Let me begin with some basic motivations, explaining what's going on in South Korea. Korea's growth rate has been declining for some time, and this slowdown coincides with very fast demographic transitions. Korea is now entering the super-aged society faster than any other country. We observe a rapid rise of population aged 65 and above, and also we observed very low fertility rate, and working age population has been significantly declining. So these changes are already increasing fiscal pressure through higher spending in pensions, healthcare, and social services. That's very familiar to Japanese audience. So at the same time, though, we see this external environment has become more uncertain. We are witnessing rising protectionism and the geo-economic fragmentations, as well as war. So this means the major economies increasingly use the trade, investment, and industrial policy as strategic tools. So this gives significant pressure for South Korea, because South Korea, whose growth model has long relied on export-oriented manufacturing under open international trade system. But now everything has been changing. So the question is, I think it's improving this long-term growth would be important. But of course, national economy have several goals, not just the economic growth, stability, fairness, and global competitiveness, and the well-being of the populations. But sustained economic growth, I believe, is the foundation for achieving all of these objectives. So this is why I pick up this potential growth as improving potential growth as today's topic. And I believe this will be not just the one policy target, but it's a foundation to achieve this all long-term economic objectives for South Korea. So from now, I'll give some data to support what I just said as a motivation. So this chart shows the declining growth trend. Growth slowdown is coming from the several factors. Korea has been a very rapid catch up to the advanced countries, but this effect, convergence effect, has become weaker as Korea improved its living standard, and also labor force growth declined, and productivity growth has also declined. So what will happen in the future? Well, people see this continuous decline based on the several assumptions. So according to the OECD's long-term projections, Korea's potential growth rate is expected to fall below 1% by the 2040s, and then turn negative by the late 2050s. So, but this projection is not inevitable, but it's clearly a warning to the South Korean economy. And what's going on in the population? Let me show some population data here. Left-hand side, you can see the projected decline in the total population as well as the working age population. The share of working age population has been declining significantly in terms of projections. And the right-hand side, you can see the share of the elderly population is rising steeply compared to any other major economies. Of course, Japan experienced aging earlier, but Korea's speed is even faster and then exceeding the Japan very soon. What will happen to fertility? Fertility is also very interesting. Korea's fertility rate has fallen dramatically since the 1970s, but recently it has declined further. So now it's around 0.75, between 0.8. So it's very low. So what's the cause of this declining fertility rate? It's coming from the slowdown in the marriage rate. The share of never married individuals in their 20s and 30s, 40s has increased significantly, as you can see the right-hand side figure. So this trend suggests that the demographic decline is quite structural. It's not cyclical. So demography is given to South Korea in the future. So what are the central questions? So all these changes brings us three central questions of today's presentations. First, will demographic change determine Korea's future? Or is it policy dependent? And secondly, can AI and human capital offset labor decline and population aging? And third, what institutional and policy design allows this technology and human capital to translate it into sustained growth? So these are the major topics I'll discuss. And then I'm very glad to speak to the Japanese audience. Of course, Japan must matter for Korea in the context of today's topic. See, Japan experienced rapid population aging and growth slowdown earlier than Korea. It has developed a strong technological capability and human capital ahead of the South Korea. And so Korea can learn from Japan's successes, but of course it's a policy constraint. Japan has not been always successful, but hopefully Korea still has relatively more fiscal and policy space, so we can address the structural challenges a little bit earlier and hopefully avoid our given destiny. So this is what we're trying to say. Well, the best outcome is from the Korea's perspective is not to copy Japan, but to cooperate closely and in addressing these common challenges. So, of course, aging is an important issue. We are not compete on the speed of aging. So we should compete on how to respond effectively to the aging problems. So let me, before starting this presentation to going to some policy issues, I want to just discuss some theoretical and empirical background. First on this demographic changes, how it will affect the economic growth. That's the first we should look at. So, of course, there are several channels. Demographic change affect growth. So I listed here. First, a shrinking labor force itself is the direct negative impact on economic growth. And the population aging may reduce average productivity. People become older, workforce become older and older. It used to be more 20s, in 20s, but now it's in 40s and 50s and 60s. And the innovation incentives may weaken as the workforce ages. But I want to emphasize today, this is a crucial point, demography does not automatically determine growth path. So it's the given condition, but we can avoid the destiny. Because growth can be offset through many channels. First, higher women and old workers' labor force participation. It has been continuously increasing in South Korea, and fertility has been a little bit gradually recovered. That's also another issue. But more importantly, labor quality issues. The older workers in 20 years ago is not the same as the old workers now. They have a different human capital. Here, I'll explain human capital later, but basically their productivity is higher. And then the capital deepening and technology progress are also important. There are many other productive factors rather than the labor itself. So today I will not really go to some more theoretical or the scholarly work I did, but I want to just starting the discussion. I want to just emphasize that there are some empirical measures. For example, for South Korea, I assume that some along these margins, because South Korea's workforce participation has been increasing from the women and older workers, and then capital substitute for labor, and the technological progress has been faster. And Korea, this will offset growth rate decline caused by the labor decline. So it's about 1 percentage point average could offset the labor force effect. So this means that again, I mean, this demography does not automatically determine the growth path, even though it gives negative impact. The policy and structural adjustment matters significantly. So I'll give some very simple accounting here. So if you think about the production function, working age population has been declining. It will have a negative impact on the GDP growth, but through the share of the labor in the production. So Korea's working age population growth rate will decline of 1.4 percentage point, according to UN estimation. It's a significant decline on average per year until 1950. That will have declined the GDP growth by 0.8 percentage point. So assuming that everything is the same, if you follow this basic accounting is in the economic textbooks, we can claim that the South Korea's growth rate is now about the GDP growth rate potentially means the long-term average around 1.5 and 6, that will go below the 1 percentage point. It's become 1.5 and 6 over time in the 20 years. But if you look at the growth accounting, 2010 and between 2010 and 2019, that's the lower part of the table. You can see actually in the Korea's economic growth, the contribution by the labor input has been very small. It's already labor input has not been contributed to the GDP growth a lot. It's only 10% of the total growth. Human capital growth, see, this is basically quality of the labor, not a quantity of labor. And the physical capital accumulation and total factor productivity, this is a measure of the technological progress and the improvement of resource allocation contribute more. So it's a basic claim here is that what will happen in the future? Even though the upper part table must be true, it has the decline in GDP growth, but the other part, which will have a more significant role in the GDP growth, may be improved if South Korea adopted the right policies. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'll just give some several factors here. For example, labor supply. Like Japan, the employment rate of all the people has been increasing significantly. You can see the actually employment rate of the elderly population is the highest among the OECD countries. So it has increased significantly. Female labor force participation rate compared to the 2020, the 2025 has significantly increased. That you get the blue line in the right-hand side, blue line significant. Even though still there are some gaps between the male and female, but female labor force participation significantly increased. The so-called M-type shape of the labor force participation along the age cohort has disappeared, or very, very little showing visible in the South Korea now. So female labor force participation increased significantly. So again, in terms of the even labor quantity, we cannot assume labor quantity will decline along the path of the working age population. Working age population is the age between 15 and 64, but now is the other part has been the increase. So we cannot say this is given. And also an important issue, I've been doing research here, and it's very important topic, whether this old workers' productivity is lower than the young workers. Yes, of course, I mean, if you use the on average data, this elderly, if we increase the elderly employment, even though it raised aggregate GDP, but it may slow average labor productivity because the older workers have a lower productivity compared to the young workers. But empirical evidence on aging and individual productivity is still inconclusive. Even though physical and cognitive abilities often decline with age, that's true, but now old workers are better educated and more experienced, so they could have greater productivity. And also, what kind of skills and technologies and institutions are combined with these elderly workers is important. With the right skills and the right digital capitals, they may have a better productivity. So this is I think, the important issue. And then some people arguing that also if population becomes much older, this will induce technological change, more friendly to the older people. So more automation will increase, automation speed will increase. This is Asimov and Restrepo argued in the 2017 paper. So again, I mean, we are talking about people are often skeptical about the increasing employment rate of the older workers because they may kick out the young workers from the labor force and then also lower average productivity. In some sense, that's true, but it depending on the policies and institutions. How? Because the older workers are now better educated and more experienced. So how to improve technology and their skills, and especially the combined with between skill and technology would be very important issues. So today, my discussion is basically based on this slide. This is the overall framework. So you can see the human capital and AI work together, and this growth will be sustained when human capital, AI, and institutions and policies reinforce each other. AI increases the productivity and the innovation speed. Human capital allows effective adoption and creation of AI. AI cannot be given just as itself. Human capital should utilize the AI. Because then, again, this is also important. This is a virtuous cycle. Economic growth feedback into the future human capital accumulation and technological development. If growth rate is so low, why people invest in the skills? Because they may be unemployed. So and then these institutions and policies coordinate and amplify these interactions. So there are many important institution policies, education, labor market, R&D, regulation, data, and infra. These kind of things are very important. So central challenge for Korea, again, is not just to address the demographic changes, but activate this virtuous cycle through the human capital, AI, and institutions. So from now on, I'll briefly explain the human capital first, and then AI, and then going to the institutions and policies. So first let me now turn specifically to human capital. Well, what is human capital? Because I say human capital, some people call it different ways. So, but economics textbooks usually we call human capital because people are very familiar with physical capital. So human capital refers to skill, knowledge, and intelligence and abilities acquired through education and training and experience. Basically, we argue that human capital theorists argue that labels are heterogeneous, not the same, because they are embodied with a different level of skill and knowledge, intelligence. So how do we improve human capital is important. And then the literature shows that the human capital increases productivity at both micro and macro levels. At the individual levels, educational attainment, that's the quantity of education, such as average years of schooling, and the quality of education, such as test scores and adult skills, and work experience and learning by doing are always very important in improving individual labor productivity. And the economic-wide level, human capital improves economic growth because it increases return to the capital investment, and also generate knowledge spillovers among the well-educated, skilled workers. And it enhances R&D capacity and technological innovation, and also facilitate technological absorptions. So modern growth theory in the economic textbook emphasized human capital as central to the long-run growth. So that's why I focus on these human capital issues. Then let's go to the Korea's situation. Korea is very well known in the very rapid accumulation of the human capital, especially through the formal education. So you can see this figure in the left-hand side. The school enrollment rate increased significantly over time, especially in the secondary and tertiary education during the period of rapid industrialization. You can see the very rapid increase. I do not compare to the other countries today, but basically the speed of increase in the average years of schooling was the fastest. South Korea was among all the countries in the world. And then not just this quantity, in terms of quality is hard to measure, but if you believe it can be measured by the average test score in the international assessment, Korea has been doing very well. For example, as you can see the right-hand side the figure, Korea as well as East Asian economies, including Japan, students among the top performers in the mathematics and science and all other fields. So at least this broad expansion of high quality basic education at the primary and secondary was one of the key drivers of Korea's rapid economic growth, especially during the manufacturing-led industrialization has been very important. But what are the weaknesses? Well, just there are many weaknesses. So, but I will emphasize especially the low quality of college education, tertiary education, and lifelong learning and the training. First, the overall quality of university education appears relatively low. For international comparison, I just brought here one of my major in my paper. This is the share of graduate produced by the universities ranked among the global top tiers, top 50 or top 100. And the table shows that Korea universities remain relatively weak in terms of the quality. Very small percentage of the graduate are graduate from the top ranking universities. So well, you can think about this issue. Well, of course, Japan is also lower, but in terms of ratio, it's much higher. So, and then another important issue is the significant mismatch between the education and jobs. I'll get back to this issue. And then third, adult skills measured by the literacy, numeracy, and adaptive problem solving by OECD among the adult people, age between the 20 and 64. And in terms of these proficiency measures, Korea scores quite lower on average compared to the OECD average across most cohort. And then this skills has been declining significantly along the ages. So this is the big challenge for South Korea. There are actually big gap between Japan and Korea. So one problem in the Korea is because the people get the lifetime employment. In many cases, they don't need to be trained. So this is another issue. But again, I mean, for South Korea, even though Korea is famous about this educational achievement through the strong formal education system in the primary and secondary, there are many challenges. How to build and then utilize the human capital. And let me move to the AI. Okay, so now people may be very familiar with the AI. We call the general purpose technology. This is comparable to the old GPTs like the steam power, electricity, and IT. But the AI has one advantage. It it's it augments cognitive tasks, means that it performs prediction, analysis, and optimizations, and then create contents. So and then even improve by itself. So this is the big advantage. But at this moment, maybe we could judge that the future of AI is still a little bit unclear. There are high uncertainties, and means that there are create a lot of the uncertainty and risks. There are great potential to substantially increase productivity, but also there are risks such as job displacement, income inequality, market concentration in the digital platforms, and governance issues, including the national security issues. So, but my focus here is the question on the productivity effect of AI. So there are many researches. Perhaps every day there are new research on this area. So, but in general, let me summarize in this way: AI increased productivity by several channels. First, this automation of the routine tasks make the people reallocate resources to the non-routine and high-value works. So sometimes, even myself, I don't need to spend a lot of time to the routine tasks. For example, grammar checks and then making the PPT slightly better. But this could be done by the AI easily. So, and then now investment in the intangible and knowledge capital increased significantly, investing in the AI sector and AI adoption. So it's automatically increase production. And the AI enhance efficiency of innovation and R&D process. So basically, I'm saying that the AI has great potential, and then increasing evidence that at the workers level, it increased the quality of labor, increased the capital deepening, increased the technological progress. So it could increase the aggregate GDP growth, but question is the magnitude. And then people now look at this is maybe only concentrated on the certain sectors. So diffusion and adoption of AI in the across sectors may take a long time. This is called the productivity J-curve. Even though initially there would be organizational and institutional adjustment costs. So it could be even declining GDP. So the aggregate estimate are quite diverse. For example, some conservative model-based estimates, such as Asimov Nobel Prize winner in 2024, suggest that AI may raise annual growth by about only 0.1 percentage point over the next decade. Very small. But in contrast, more optimistic projections, including Agion and Brunel, another Nobel Prize winner, they say, much larger effect. At least they say, look at the other general purpose technologies, such as the internet or the electricity. They could be about 1.3 percentage point annually. So it could be 1.3 percentage point. And then also they did the model-based estimation again. And then with some assumptions, it could become 0.7 percentage point. So the key message here, still uncertainty remain, but the actual outcomes will depend heavily on the many other factors, including institutional designs, but there are great potentials of AI to improve the productivity over time, and at the aggregate level, increase the GDP growth. perhaps up to the 1 percentage point. Okay, let me get to the labor market effect, because the AI substitute for routine tasks, but some people are working for only routine tasks, so their employment will disappear or may lower wages for these affected workers. But wages and employment in non-routine jobs may increase. So it's complicated. They may call this complementarity is important. Your work is complementary to the AI will give the more benefits. Now, a lot of evidence, micro evidence showing that if productivity gains are observed for not just for skilled workers, but also for less skilled workers. But aggregate employment effect could be depending on the many other factors, such as skill distribution, adoption speed, and institutions, especially labor market flexibility. How labor market is flexible is very important in terms of reallocating displaced workers due to AI to the other productive sectors. I think it's the important. So I did some study on the AI effect on South Korea, but let me say that many studies on this issue is still very preliminary, because even though AI has been adopted very widely in South Korea, the data is still limited, and then only a few years. So some people are using the model and then trying to estimate the impact. So I want to just introduce the one study here. IMF and Bank of Korea, these joint papers showing that the effect depends on the degree of AI exposure and task level complementarity. And about 50% of jobs in Korea are highly exposed to the AI. So, and then out of them, is about half is have a high complementarity. The other has the low complementarity. So some will benefit and others face risks depending on the complementary of AI. One study I want to introduce, actually using the Korea data, is I find that productivity gains may be larger for older and high-skilled workers, not just the old workers. Among old workers, old and less skilled workers may lose, but old and high-skilled workers may get the higher benefit due to AI. But in Korean perspective, labor market rigidity and the dualism constrain to worker mobility a lot. So this will be the increased transition cost. The study by IMF and Bank of Korea actually estimated, and then they say the GDP will increase over time, about 13% in the medium. So if it occurs within 10 years, growth rate will increase around 1.3% every year. But maybe 20 years, then it's lower than that. So, but anyway, they estimated the positive impact of AI on the South Korea. So, because South Korea really, which I'll explain later, is focused on the AI sectors. I want to just explain what's the current situation in the AI. Of course, the AI has been adopted very widely in South Korea, especially by large firms. Even 2023, because the IBM survey shows that around half of the large firms adopted very actively AI. And then everyone knows Korea is a key global producer of AI semiconductors, constituting about 23% of global semiconductor export. And the IMF developed this AI preparedness index. This is basically showing that how much the country could be adapting the AI technology more quickly in the economy wide. So in terms of the rank, Korea is not that high, ranked the 15th out of 165 countries. It's just slightly lower than Japan. But they said that Korea has a great strength in many areas, especially the digital infrastructure, innovation capacity, and regulatory frameworks. But compared to the other countries, that's denoted by yellow color bar in the left-hand side, Korea is slightly smaller. This is the weaknesses in the human capital utilization and labor policy. Basically, labor market is very rigid in allocating the labor resources into the productive sectors. So even though I got a job in the small and medium enterprise after college graduation, it's very hard to move to the another companies later, even though I accumulated better skills over time. And so initial job is very much important. But it has been changing a lot. But compared to the US or the other advanced countries, Korea is weaker in this area. So I explained the many things, but let me just go quickly on the strategies. Maybe I have spent too much time. Okay, so let me go quickly. I want to emphasize the importance of the three interconnected structural policy pillars here: AI strategy and human capital strategy and industrial policy. They should be interconnected, and interaction and complementarity important, not just the isolated reforms. So I'll explain one by one. Human capital strategy, again, I mean, the important thing is the improving the tertiary education quality and reducing the skill mismatch, and improve the lifelong the learning mechanisms, because in an AI-driven economy, skills become obsolete very faster. And then extending and upgrading old workers' participation, especially improving their skills. So promoting healthy and productive aging would be very important for South Korea perspective. And that's including the retirement age issues. I think that's also improved. And the labor markets, I think this is a very important issue for South Korea. If workers cannot move across sectors, productive gains from AI will remain very limited. And then this performance-based system would be important. And I think it's the one central issue is the building the human capital, is complementing AI. So the objective is not to substitute humans, but raise the productivity of human workers through AI and human complementarity. So AI is strong in the many areas, large-scale data processing and predictions and analysis. But humans are also good at the problem definitions, communication, collaboration, and ethical judgment and accountability. So the issue is here more like a human and AI collaborations. I put this in this way: building hybrid intelligence that combine human intelligence and artificial intelligence. So education should focus on the so-called 4Cs: critical thinking, creativity, communication, and the collaboration, and the digital literacy that will complement the AI. In terms of the AI strategies, I think it's the strengthen the innovation infrastructure is important, and also enabling diffusion and inclusion would be important. So especially the small and medium-sized firms are because they face high adoption costs and skill shortages. I think it's the AI transition is really important for them as well as the workers. So let me briefly explain the Korea's current AI strategies. Korea really aim to one of the top 3 global AI powers. The current government announced that. And the one key is the manufacturing AI transformation. This initiative promotes AI adoption in robotics, autonomous vehicles, AI factories, shipbuilding, and semiconductor drones, such as things. And then, but it will also include the expansion of open public data and development of the domestic AI talent and strong support for AI semiconductor productions. So let me, maybe, I have 5 minutes, or maybe I can move quickly on the industrial policy. So I just said human capital and AI, but how to improve this certain strategic sectors becomes more and more important, especially in the current situation of the geo-economic fragmentation and supply chain risks. So, but sometimes important issue is that this industrial targeting certain industry could be losing the productivity because of the excessive protection and weakened competition or political capture. So I think it's the principle of effective industrial policy are very important, such as high quality design and implementation on the government-private collaboration and clear exit mechanisms. So especially industrial policy and current context facilitate industrial transformation by allocating AI and human capital toward more productive sectors. I think that's important. So Korea industrial policies I summarized here. Korea is now targeting not just the semiconductors, but also defense, biotech, and K-culture. They passed the government legislators passed special act on semiconductors and also passed economic security and supply chain resilience. So this is the what clearly South Korea is also reviving the new industrial policy. So let me conclude. The next two slides summarize the key messages of my presentation. So first, Korea faces, of course, serious structural constraint, especially population aging. But AI and human capital can counteract this negative effect of the demographic changes. So important thing is the raising productivity. So higher productivity is the foundation of sustained economic growth. So combining the AI and the human capital and institutions could bring out the higher productivity and sustained growth over time, perhaps at around 2% over the midterm is still achievable. So what kind of policies? Let me summarize here 4 key directions. First, I think is the old workers, how to use the old workers, not just to extend their stay in the labor market, but upgrading them is important for Korea. And then the shifting education toward the more cognitive skills, complementing AI and new technologies, and then deepening labor market reforms for mobility and reallocations, and integrating AI policy, human capital policy, and industrial policy into a coherent strategy for productivity growth would be important. So ultimately, it's not just coming from the one single policy, but how to bring out the synergy from the well-combined the policies could be very important. So thank you very much. I look forward to your comment.